Hello, everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker Training. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of FMTraining.tv, where every day at 1 o'clock Pacific, we are doing awesome FileMaker training, sometimes on fun topics, sometimes on unsavory topics. It's always educational and hopefully entertaining along the way. Today, we have Rosemary Tietge from Claris. That's 2 days of Claris back to back. Claris is going to get sick of me, so I'm going to be thrown out of the building. But until then, I'm going to keep bringing people on the show. It's going to be exciting. We're going to be talking about the continuing conversation about getting people through the upgrade process, not so much like, oh, you're on 20 and you're going to go to 21, or you're on 19 and you go to 21. We're talking about really larger, Jacob Taylor calls long distance upgrades. So we'll be jumping into that. So I want to welcome Rosemary. Rosemary, are you there?
I am here. Thanks for having me.
So Rosemary, so let me just frame how we got to this conversation, everyone. So the conversation came up is that we're always running into people, and there's always these conversations where a customer hasn't upgraded FileMaker in a while, and it worked fine. And why put money into something that's working fine? Because, and the problem is that the road to hell is paved with it works fine. Let's just keep going, especially in software. And you can end up finding yourself using FileMaker 12 or something, and the current version is 21 or something. And so that's a pretty big jump in upgrades. So people come to me and they come to Claris, they come to Rosemary and they say, hey, how do we upgrade? Or what are, should I just install it and go for it? There's a lot of moving pieces to that. And so it came to the attention that I was working on this and Rosemary and the Claris team was working on it. So we thought we would at least compare notes. And so today we've combined forces. At least for today, we're combined forces. And so Rosemary's been working on a document. You want to share your screen, talk about a little bit, but it's some guidelines, right? Is that what
yeah. So I just want to going back to that. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Back in my Claris FileMaker systems engineer days, we always said, if it works, invest in it and maintain it. Because, getting to the latest version not only will probably be more performant, it will definitely be more secure, and it will work with modern operating systems.
The conversation about upgrading is super important, and Claris is getting hit with this all the time. And I think the fundamental that comes into it, all of you know, is if you stay up to date within a version or so, the upgrades are easier. It's when you wait more than, say, a couple years, it becomes exciting, or could become exciting. It's not necessarily exciting, but if you have mission critical applications, it's where you need to be careful about blowing your stuff up, if that makes sense. So, and what I mean by that is I have a diagram here. We will make mine available as well. In fact, Margaret will do this. But I have this diagram where you go through this process. But I think that up here you decide that you want to do the upgrade, and then the number one thing you realize is that you're going to be testing a new system, right, while the old system continues to run in place. It's super, super important if your organization is critically dependent upon FileMaker, where it cannot be down or you're out of business. So this is one of the first things that comes up. Even Rosemary, they talk about this, but you want to think about maintaining your live system while you're chasing the upgrade, right? There we go. So we are here.
Yes, here I am. So this is why when I wrote this document, and I just want to give some credit to Richard, Beverly, who I know is listening, and a bunch of the other MVPs and experts in the community who helped kind of define this with me. Because, 10 years ago, I talked about upgrading server and FileMaker all the time. I don't do that so much anymore. Really wanted to focus, as Richard was saying, on the preparation first. I don't know how many times we see in Claris community, someone installs an upgrade without checking the operating system requirements and realizes they've just installed the latest version of FileMaker on an operating system it won't run on, and then suddenly nothing works. So we wrote 2 documents. One is really how to prepare to upgrade. So these are the things to think about before you jump in with both feet. And, number one, make sure your computers, hardware and software and operating systems will run the latest version of FileMaker where you're going. And then do some thorough documentation of what how your systems are set up. Are your FileMaker Pro clients using plugins? What are your FileMaker server settings? Yes, and Margaret has the links, so hopefully she's dropped them in to share them. The other thing is these links are also on the Claris community homepage under featured articles. So yeah, so just the documentation. And this is really just write down everything. And I think it was Wim who suggested in a community post or maybe in the feedback on this document, take screenshots of your FileMaker server settings. But just, make notes of all the things that you need to rebuild when you set up your new server.
You said when you build your new server. What does that imply? When you build a new server, you don't want to commit. You're going to end up having two servers. You should, if it's mission critical, have two servers running in parallel. Now, Claris might not tell you that, but that's where if you draw the lines here, right, you end up really with two servers, right?
Yep. And that's what I say in the next section of testing. Again, you want to make sure that everything works as you expect it to. I mean, every release of FileMaker, there are some subtle things change in subtle ways. And if you're keeping up with every version, you'll probably just be able to gloss right through a lot of them. But sometimes there's a major behavior shift. Things like, I don't remember what version it was when we took out the classic theme. So if you have an app that's really old and predates FileMaker 12, that you've just been upgrading along for many years, you may still have layouts with classic theme as the underlying layout. And we pulled that out at some point. So you may have layouts that suddenly don't perform well in your production environment. And you want to know that before you cut over to the latest version. And I mean, that's just one example. So best case, as Richard said, you leave your old server running and everybody working as they are, and you set up a new server, and your license allows you to do this, to run 2 or 3 servers simultaneously so that you have a test environment, a development environment, and a production environment. And that also helps if you have both servers running, you can even go back and forth and look at them and make sure, okay, am I configuring everything the same way? And then grab copies of your files and get them up and running on that server. Best case, you're deploying on new hardware. Next best is you have a Mac Mini or another older hardware that may not be up to your production load, but that you can still use for testing. And in that case, you wouldn't probably go live on that machine. You would then have to uninstall and reinstall once you're done testing. But absolutely important to test. And, with FileMaker, with Claris, you can reach out to FileMaker sales and get a 45-day server license. If you don't have a current server, don't have a current FileMaker license, and part of what you're doing is evaluating, is it time to buy the upgrade? Go ahead and get in touch with sales. They'll hook you up with that server trial license so you can do that testing before you commit to the purchase. Another option is a lot of the Claris hosting partners offer short-term hosting contracts or trials that you can also use for testing.
Is there a list of features that have been depreciated in FileMaker that I can look at somewhere to see where the stumbling blocks might be?
Yes, there is in the knowledge base an article about deprecated features. And I think there's also, if you go to you can also get to it from any release notes. That article is linked at the end of all the release notes.
Can I suggest there's 2 articles that are interesting to you? You can do a search for them. One is the deprecation, and then there's the opposite of that one, which is the stuff that's been added from version to version to version that, like if you're making a really big jump from like 14 to 21 or something, you can see all the stuff that's in there, if you're trying to make the case for that. So, yeah.
Yep, that is also a good one. Yeah, the other one that's really helpful is if you just kind of need a look at kind of operating system history or what will work on what operating system. There's also an article that gives you kind of every version, what operating systems it ran on, both Windows and Mac. And I think when we stopped support of that version.
Oof, that's good. That's a good. I don't think I've seen that one, but that'd be a good one to have. Hot Air Balloonkin says, "What's the best way besides watching the live stream and checking the community daily to be notified of Claris announcements and webinars?" You'd want what like notifications from the community turned on, right?
Yeah, so one is turn on notifications. So specifically for Claris webinar announcements, if you follow me in the community, I always post. So if you say, send me email whenever someone I follow posts, that's a good option. As far as like product updates, I always post those in the product announcements group. So again, on community, let me just go to it. Easy way. Yeah, so if you go in the community to the special interest groups and go to Claris product announcements, join this group. And then once you join it, change your email settings from weekly digest to every post. And then whenever we post about a product update, you'll get that. And that'll either be from me or for major releases, we very frequently have the product managers will be the author of those posts. So those are two good ways.
The subtlety there, and most people, and I didn't understand this until Jacob had to explain to me, is you sign up for these groups, but then you're on a weekly dump of data on your email, and I couldn't figure out like why I wasn't getting timely notifications. Is because I had set it to be something other than daily, or daily might be fine, or instantaneous if it's super important, right? That kind of thing. So
yeah, so here I am, join group, and then this is the setting you want to change from weekly digest to every post right there.
Yeah, that is almost everyone misses that, including yours truly. And it took people smarter than me to explain it. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yep. And if you want to follow me specifically, I just logged in with my testing account. So so you're seeing, okay, this is Rosemary Tietge. That's the person you want to follow. You just say, go right there and follow. And while we're here, I will show you how to do setting up your email notifications really quickly. Go to my settings, and then down here, you would say enable email notifications. Make sure that that's checked, and then you can check whatever setting you want to know. And since this is my test account, I don't want to get all the emails.
No, exactly. Well, that's what happens. You get too many, then you say, quit doing this, and you have a tantrum at the keyboard, and then suddenly you get none, and then you miss important notifications, which is the sequence to that.
Yeah, and the other really subtle thing, and this is something I take up with our vendor all the time, is that email settings for groups are not controlled on that profile page. Those you need to control on every group you are part of. There's not a global group email setting.
We have a question, which is, I don't want to have to worry about this. This makes me really nervous. Can I just send my FP7 file to you guys to put on FileMaker Cloud and have you deal with the jump for me?
Unfortunately, no. Claris cannot.
Claris cannot do that. A FileMaker consultant can help you with that. However, the issue is that you still have an expectation that it behaves the way it did when FileMaker. So the FP7 file format is FileMaker 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And so I think going from a 7 to a modern version generally is going to be okay. You might have to re-stroke the layout a little bit to make it happy, but generally, loosely, it will work. But even if a consultant says, hey, here it is, I dropped it up there for you, you're going to have to test the new one versus the old one to make sure it meets your expectations. Now, if you're not doing anything with a plugin and you're not super married to exactly how it looks, like if I was looking at this layout here and suddenly it was, the alignment was wrong, it's like over here, the alignment's moving around, or the colors are different, or things are, it's off the bottom of the page a little bit. If that's going to mess up your day, then you need to do more testing. If you're a little bit more flexible, then maybe you're willing to accept it as is. It's just one of those things that we want you to test it before you commit, right? I think is what Rosemary's been trying to say.
Yeah, and if, and this is, again, like you can do a really, quick test, download the FileMaker 2024 trial, and just drop the file onto the FileMaker 2024 icon, because whenever you convert a file, the old one stays behind exactly as it was. So you can just, drop it into the new version, it will convert it, and then you'll at least see what it looks like, and you can at least do some single user testing there to make sure everything is okay.
Now, we covered Claris Cloud yesterday a little bit. If you saw that conversation, we hadn't done it in a while. And the product manager Sangeeta came on, and it was frankly a great conversation. And so I think that if you have minimal needs and you don't have any crazy like server-side plugin things going on, because you can install a plugin. So in FileMaker, there's little things that you can buy from someone, and it's a plugin like a Photoshop plugin. Most of the time, the plugins are put on your copy of Pro on Mac or Windows. Some people put it on server, but if you don't need it to run on server, then maybe the cloud is the best way of getting into that. Just keep in mind that the minimum purchase is 5 users, right? So 5 users using cloud for a year. So that's going to work out to $2,000 for the year, or whatever that price point is. Was it $15, Rosemary? Do you remember the essential? It was $15 per user per month.
That sounds about right.
So that was a good question, Margaret. So the answer is, I think historically, now once again, the views, okay, this is one of those things we should have started the TV show. The views and opinions expressed by Richard do not represent those of Claris, Apple Inc., or anyone else who is important. Your viewer discretion is advised. Right, so here's what I'd say. If you have a version of FileMaker that's older, it uses a file format before FP7, so it's FP5 or FM or whatever it's going to be. If the solution is very simple, you can try to drag it. You need to drag it on the FileMaker, like FileMaker 11 first to do a conversion. Once again, a partner can help you with that. And then so once you jump to FP7, then you can jump to FMP12. People are confused by that sometimes. In fact, I had someone was confused, came to me and goes, Richard, why are you promoting FileMaker 12? This is like a month ago. And I'm like, I'm not promoting FileMaker 12. It's still the file format that we use today. Claris did such a good job designing the file format back 10 years ago or whenever FileMaker 12 was out, longer than that.
Longer than that.
Yeah, longer than that by quite a bit. I'm being charitable. So that the new versions still use that file format. So when I say FMP12, it doesn't mean I'm endorsing FileMaker 12. It just means that is the current version, which also means, interestingly enough, that you could take the FMP12 file and go all the way back to FileMaker 12 and open it if you have that app and if you have a computer that will run it. Now,
and if you're prepared for a lot of things not to work.
Yes, yeah. If you build new features, right, and then you go back to really old version, you may get these red X's on the screen where a button bar or something a FileMaker doesn't recognize. The older versions don't recognize it.
Yeah, or a script or a calculation won't work.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the bigger one. Like if you have there's a lot of new script steps. So
what'll happen? Will just the script refuse to run entirely, or will it just do parts of it, which I feel like would be worse?
It'll probably just do parts of it.
Oh.
It depends how the abort set, probably. It's not something I generally recommend people do, so I don't see it that often. But if it runs into an incompatible script step, if user abort is set off, I think it's going to keep plowing forward. You know, that old phrase, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, it's an old Navy term. Doesn't mean what you're getting shot at, just keep going no matter what, right? So it's, yeah, you need to be, that's why the testing comes up, right?
This is why we test.
You want to test, right? So, David Ozer says it was $16.50 per user per month times a minimum of 5 people for 12 months, and you pay annually, generally, right? So you can do the math on that, someone, and let me know what that is.
And I think, as Sangeeta said yesterday, we do have a special running too for Cloud Essentials.
Yeah.
So you get in touch with the Claris sales team. There is a promotion running right now. I don't remember what the.
No, it's so the Essentials is still Essentials, but the standard, the beefier one, was like 43, but they have it written down to like 20 some odd dollars for the discount is what that is. So once again, if you need more people or you want a bigger server or more hard drive space, that kind of thing. This has a pricing link here from David Angel, so you can go to claris.com. You can see the various pricing. It says find your plan. This is the on-prem. So where is the pricing for? This is fun. So if you go to Claris, you do okay. Here's cloud. Okay, essentials is 21. 21 is essentials. Then 43 was standard, and then but there's a promotion to like 28 or something. It's like a little bit more than this, and you can get into the standard pretty inexpensively. So this includes all the software, all your client software, includes your server software, the FileMaker, essentially the server, married to a piece of hardware. And you're not going to do the install, it's all handled for you automatically. That's the cloud benefit, right? That's pretty neat.
And the security ops and DevOps, all the things to make sure that you are always running and always being updated, and the storage and everything else. So you don't need to do anything except be prepared to run your server over the wide area network and not your local area network, which can have some
performance
development challenges.
But that's why we have live streams. They can show up here and we'll teach them how to make it awesome. No problem. We got that one covered.
Yeah. Well, I loved telling this particular story. I have a neighbor and like literally lives around the corner from me, who's a Claris partner. So I bump into him occasionally, or he posts on the community and I say, hey, I saw your post. What happened with that? And he had moved a client to FileMaker Cloud a few months ago, came to the community and said, hey, things are really slow, probably because his app had originally been designed for a local area network. And somebody smart on the community said, hey, have you just tested it with WebDirect? And he said they turned on WebDirect and it works beautifully for this small team. And that, bought him the time to do the re-architecture that they needed.
Yes.
For better cloud performance.
Yeah, there's always a number of different possible answers to, and that's the benefit of having a community like this that frankly volunteers and donates their time, and Claris having a bunch of different facets to the product. So if you run into a situation where, and it would tip in your document, right? And you want to go back to your document, Rosemary, and continue that a little bit. And one of the ideas was that if you run into an issue with hardware compatibility, you might be able to get there with using WebDirect, because WebDirect is more forgiving in terms of the wide variety of versions that Claris supports with that.
Yeah, I think I did say that somewhere. That's actually in the second document.
You have two documents. Let's keep going on your document.
Yeah, so, just back to testing, the best thing to do is involve all your users if you can, or at least some key users in testing. When I was still working as an in-house developer, we would take over a conference room and put everybody in the room and make them test as we were getting ready to roll out updates, or this was actually going back to going live with a new system even. Make sure that the people who are going to be using this app all the time can still do their jobs and that things work as they expect.
Yeah, I'm just going to add some, and once again, the opinions of Richard do not necessarily reflect those of Claris. I have found that you have to confiscate people's phones when they come into the room for testing, because otherwise most people would rather go to the dentist and have a cavity drilled out of their head than go to do testing. So they would, if they have their phone or a mobile device or anything, you've got to really remove the distractions. It's kind of an important thing. If you have the juice organizationally to get away with doing that, right? So yeah.
So now you've made sure your hardware's all good. You've tested. You've got a test environment that will hopefully now be your production environment. Last thing to do is do a little planning and change management. So you're gonna say, okay, I am confident this will all work. Put a date on the calendar and tell everybody this is the day that we're going to go live on the new upgrade. Because if you're coming from way back, actually before FileMaker 19, you need to update FileMaker Pro and FileMaker Go and FileMaker Server all at the same time. And also let people know, is the FileMaker Server address going to change? Like, how will they get to the server? Is it exactly the same, or do you need to tell them this is the new link to get to FileMaker Server? And then what else do they need to know? And having worked through many big system updates, both FileMaker systems and things like Claris Community, if you do bad change management, there will be a failure. And that is really about managing the people It's not about the technology. It's making sure the people are ready for what's coming.
Yeah, and that's an important part of this. And I agree with everything she said here. If you have a chance to talk to management, find out that they don't have any big corporate organizational deadlines that occur at the same time as your live rollout. You want people to be as unstressed as possible in so much as you can manage that. So they don't have like the critical corporate deadline, and you also, that's at noon and you swapped out the database Monday morning, and 4 hours later there's this killer deadline. This is unsavory for everyone involved. I have a question here from DeWitt on YouTube. He says, this is a good one. So if you're using a layout like River, which is from an old version of FileMaker, and you upgrade and that is no longer there, do you need to swap it out with a newer layout?
Oh, you're thinking layout themes?
Yeah, this is a pre-12 layout, so it's a style or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, don't hold me to this, but if you're actually using a theme, that theme will be part of your file. So if you made a new file, you wouldn't be able to continue to use that. You wouldn't be able to select that theme without importing it. But if it's already in your file, you should, I believe, still be able to apply it to new layouts.
I think the question is two different ways. So if it's a post-12 file, then some themes get deprecated, but once you have it in your file, you're generally okay. Here's the thing that happened between FileMaker 11 and 12 is that themes were created, right? Themes were created in general. And one of the things that happened there, the issue was that they took whatever you built and they perfectly, almost with perfect pixel replication, built it into a theme was called Classic. And so Classic is still in there, right? Rosemary, you just can't get to it officially anymore, but it's still kind of buried under the hood, right?
It's still buried under the hood, but it is, especially on Windows,
yes,
a huge problem for performance.
Yes.
Because if you think about like what's happening under the hood is everything is being rendered using CSS, which is the same technology used to style things on websites. And what a theme does is it says, okay, whenever you see a field, format it this way. But what's happening with Classic Theme is every single object on your layout has a command or a line in the CSS. So the CSS for that layout can be really, really, really big. So rather than saying, okay, every field is 12-point Arial, once in the CSS, in Classic Theme, this field is 12-point Arial is repeated for every field on your layout. So if there are 50 fields on your layout, that styling command is in your layout 50 times.
It becomes super noticeable for those of you wondering about this. She said this, but I'm going to amplify this. That is, if you have a bunch of users that have good computers or newer computers, you may not notice a problem at all. We had a customer who had bought at the time, this is 10 years ago, a bunch of older Windows machines with the minimal amount of RAM and all that kind of stuff. Those computers struggled to display that layout after it had been converted because it was so kind of, big. It was a fat theme. It's a lot of data, unnecessary data. So then we went through to kind of rebuild it with a new theme, a new layout, and the performance problems went away. So we're back to the trying conversation. Rosemary said, try it first, find out what happens. If it's great and speedy, then leave it alone, right? It works fine, right? Having some users really test the server before the upgrade goes active really helps make sure there are no surprises. That's Canberra 57. He worked at Sandia Labs. He's I think retired now. Beverly said to DeWitt, if you're using WebDirect, you may need to switch, try out some things. Some things just work fine if you bring them forward. So that's why before everyone gets into a giant panic about will it upgrade, just don't do it to your live system, but take a copy, try it out, see what happens. I was talking to Claris Marketing, and what Jacob Taylor's not here frequently calls it squeal testing. It's where the customer just does the upgrade, forget testing, forget it all, just go for it. And then the people who did the upgrade, which are the IT people at the company, are listening to see if the users start squealing and yelling and complaining. That's not the proactive way of dealing with it. Squeal testing is the opposite method. Some people do it that way, right? But generally, we're advocating more of a professional attack with that. But again, that's if you have a test server, then you can go for it and try it, and you don't have to worry about the results. If it doesn't work, then you call a timeout and you rethink what you're doing. If we have time, I'll do a drag and drop on a FileMaker 7 file. I have one here ready when we get that point. So there we go.
All right, let me zoom again. So this is the second article. So we've done all the preparation. It's go live day. So these are what you need to think about and do. And again, this document, like you can get everything that's outlined in this article in the FileMaker server documentation. I just tried to pull it together and organize it into kind of a few chunks. So the first one, make sure you get to FileMaker 2024 and FileMaker Go 2024 on all the devices, especially if you're coming from 19.3 or earlier. Just because that's, again, where the FileMaker Pro and FileMaker Server versions don't all interoperate, even though we're using the same file format. So best case, if you've bought new server hardware, set up your server environment already so that you can test on that, then all you need to do for go live is install FileMaker Pro and move your files from your old server to your new server. This is part of why Richard and I both advocate so strongly to do that test environment, do that test server if you can at all. So then the other cutoff point when you're installing FileMaker Server 2024 is starting with FileMaker 17. We changed the way server updates work. From FileMaker 17 and forward, if you don't have to do any major operating system updates and you're kind of prepared that you might have to uninstall and go back and start over, you can take the new installer and install it right in place after you stop the FileMaker Server service and update everything in place. If you read community threads as much as I do, you will know that, kind of going, kind of a minor version update from like FileMaker 20.2 to FileMaker Server 20.3, that usually works pretty seamlessly, but making a bigger update, it should work, but it doesn't always because there are so many components that are involved. If you do not need to do a major operating system update, meaning from like Windows Server, I don't even know what the current versions are.
It's 22, I think, is the current one. Do I have that?
Is
right?
the current one. So if you're on Windows Server 19,
yeah,
and you at the same time want to get to Windows Server 21 or 22, whatever is current, in that case, you do need to uninstall FileMaker Server, do your operating system update, and then reinstall FileMaker Server.
Yeah, so upgrades that are on top, and she mentioned this, upgrades that are on top, I'm a big fan of believing that they will never work properly, and sometimes they do. And it was such a funny thing. This just happened yesterday or 2 days ago. Customer called us and said, "Hey, since you're updating the FileMaker server stuff, can you update this server? Just run the updates on this other server. It's a SQL server. We're not SQL people." And so Jay goes, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So he tells it to run a minor update on Windows, and promptly what happens is it blows the server up to the point where it won't even boot. And this is an Amazon server. And so once again, backups, always have a plan to roll backwards, right, everyone, right? I think that's about the time you think, oh, these upgrades, in-place upgrades, just work fine. You don't have to really just install it on top of the other one. About the time you think that life is great, it's gonna blow up in your face. And that's what happened to Jacob. And there was a giant panic down there when that happened because no one was expecting a minor Windows Server update to basically make the server unbootable, utterly unbootable. So, Margaret, you have a question there real quick, and then we'll jump back to Rosemary.
Sure. From Southburn, it was a nightmare trying to get our IT to install FileMaker to begin with. We have an 18 server. Any suggestions for how we convince them to upgrade it?
Pull out the critical security updates line. Like, yeah, like that. There are vulnerabilities in older versions of FileMaker Server that are fixed with FileMaker Server 2024. And because FileMaker Server 18 is not supported, there is no patch available. You just get on the latest version.
That was a good one. That was a great answer. For a second there, I wasn't sure, and then I said, "Oh, wait a minute. What does IT care about? Security, or they should care about security." Yeah, good one. Yep. Yeah. We mentioned this yesterday, everyone, but just if you missed that conversation, Apple is very involved in running ads and telling everyone how great they are in privacy and safety and this sort of stuff, and they do not want to be on the news with a problem. And as a result, Claris gets plenty of attention from Apple security and the security folks at Apple corporate to make sure that the FileMaker products are safe and secure. And that's a good thing from where I sit. So
we talked about going live on your current server. And again, these are just sort of the quick outline of what to do. But if you do need to update your operating system, as I said, you need to uninstall server, FileMaker server, update the operating system, and then reinstall FileMaker server. And also going down to, if you are running FileMaker 16 or earlier, you will need to completely uninstall FileMaker Server 16. And then, again, if you're on a server version that old, you probably also need an operating system update, or I would guess that you need an operating system update, and then
hardware, God, whatever else,
whatever else, yeah.
Does the deleting and reinstalling also go for Apple major updates?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, for me, I'm a big fan of when you're doing something that big, is I love starting with an empty drive. And of course, these days it's all, flash memory and this, that, and the other thing. But an empty drive, installing, like I said, I told Jacob, I said, anytime you do an update on top of something that's already there, I always get nervous. Oh, it works fine. 2 days ago, man, smoking hole in the ground. Blue.
Yeah.
And this is a customer with big bucks and big money, because then they were in a panic to find a backup for their stuff, which they should have because they're SQL people. And then they found out that they hadn't backed up their SQL database. And we're like, oh, yeah. So then Jacob had to do the emergency thing to get the drive to mount. Once we mounted it, we gave it back to the company and said, you guys need to take care of your stuff, right? So just pushing the button to say upgrade and hoping for the best.
Yeah, back when I was a systems engineer, for my demo server that I always carried around with me, every time I needed to do an update, it was down to completely clean operating system, reinstall.
Yep. Because then whenever you have a problem, you don't know, you're not in the back of your mind, you're not thinking, was it part of that upgrade that we did where we updated on top of the doohickey thing with the bit was 0 and not 1, and then whatever. So yeah, other questions, folks? This is great. You got Rosemary here.
I don't have any at the moment, though. I did send you the FP7 file.
So notice over here, everyone, that this is FM starting point version 2. I think it was a FileMaker 11 file, technically. The FileMaker 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 used FP7 file format. So if I double click on the Mac, it can't run it. The Mac doesn't know what FP7 belongs to. I can't install anything that old. I tried, I had a copy of FileMaker 10 installed on a M1 on Sonoma, and it would run for about 6-7 seconds and then crash. And literally, you could get anything done in FileMaker as long as you could get done in 6 to 7 seconds. And then it would, explode. And of course, when it's crashing, it's not closing the FileMaker file correctly, so you're potentially damaging it. So I'm gonna hit cancel right here. I'm gonna show my dock over here. I have FileMaker 2024, aka version 21 right here. I'm gonna drag and drop it. So when it does this, it's going to say, we're gonna convert this file. And we're gonna leave the old file, then you'll have the new file. So it's not gonna mess with the old file, it's just gonna read it. It gives birth to a brand new FP12 file. So it goes through this conversion process here. And what you'll do this part's pretty straightforward, but the part that's interesting is the part about the themes. So you can see what the themes, what happens, because there are no themes with the older version of FileMaker.
And
There you
it
go.
putts
So,
along.
there we go. So welcome to a very old version of Starting Point. This is the one that we were working with Claris or FileMaker Inc. at the time. And so if I go up here and I go to layout mode, do we see the word classic? There it is right there. It's kind of hard to see. The word theme is classic right here. And so what it did is it took this other, if you open this up in an old version of FileMaker and compared it, these would almost be pixel perfect replication. They did a really great job. However, this is a very fat theme in terms of the weight of it, in terms of, downloading it from the server, if it was on the server, and she'd go like, well, let's change the theme. So then you have all these various themes over here. Apex Blue is a current one, Enlighten, Tranquil, all sorts of crazy. I'll do Apex Blue.
I'm a big fan of minimalist generally.
Okay. So I'm going to go to like a data entry screen here. There we go. Data entry screen, layout mode, change the theme, minimalist. There's touch, which is for the phone, minimalist. Okay, I'm going to try it. 1, 2, 3, okay. Well, that's not horrible. That's actually pretty close. So then you see it did booger some stuff up, but this layout will be infinitely faster now. Infinitely faster in terms of downloading from the FileMaker server when we put it up on the FileMaker server, right, everyone? So,
and it will work on WebDirect.
Yes, it will. Oh, that's cool. It will work on WebDirect. So you'd want to clean up little things over here and, little stuff. So this is not a giant career-ending operation here. You can sit and work on this, and that is
Speaking
pretty
of
good.
interesting problems, you'll notice there's a super container over there. How would you fix that if you had used like a plugin for containers before?
You go through a conversion process to read those in. Super Container had a process for that. That Super Container is what we used to do digital document management before Claris had essentially the advent of remote containers or containers with remote storage, right? If that makes sense. So as it's a third-party product, at the time it was super critical and essential, and then Claris decided that they would build in the product, which I'm glad they did. And then we had to convert from that. So you would basically, like, here's the old style FileMaker container, right? These all had to be internal back in the day. For those of you wondering about this, you go File, Manage, Database, and then you'd go to Contacts, and it's called Image, Data, Image, and it's container. It was only one way, it didn't have any other settings. Now you can set options. You can say, store it externally, which gives you the performance externally stored. But in the old days, that check didn't exist. So that's new in the last, say, 10, 12 years or whatever it's been. All right, so I'm off in the weeds, Rosemary. What else do we want to talk about?
Well, that was my high-level process. My ask to anyone listening is if you check out those documents, find anything that's unclear, let me know. Send me email. Because we do want these to be helpful and useful and, make people's upgrades more successful. So we are absolutely interested in feedback. I was going to say the other thing I would point people to is the FileMaker server admin course that Wim DeCourt did with us that you can find in Claris Academy.
Yeah, so just for fun. All right, so the issue is, has he done the rest of them, or is he just
We are right now working on the second one and getting ready to work on the third one. So those are coming soon. Yeah, and it's on the Get Certified tab if you're...
Get Certified right there, yeah. Okay, so we've talked about this. So Claris created, basically there's low, medium, and high. For those of you wondering about this, associate, specialist, expert, low, medium, high. These are all free. They're easy to take. If you mess it up, you can take it again. The Connect certifications are here. And then down here is the server one. And so they're working on the intermediate, the specialist one, right?
Yep.
And that's great. Yeah. So awesome. Yeah, Wim is perfect for that. Wim is a true golden nugget in the FileMaker community. He is awesome. He's the gold standard for a lot of server stuff. It's great to have him. He's been on the show a couple times. It's always great to have the smart people come on the show, because then I can learn something, right? Which is always exciting. All right, cool. Any other questions? Anything else, Rosemary?
That was all I had.
I want to thank everyone for being here. You folks are awesome. Beverly, Top Cat, all the folks that contribute here. Stu, feel free to reach out to me. Say hi. Bubba Live, all the other people on YouTube and Twitch. Have a good weekend. We'll see you Monday. But all right, yeah, everyone have a good day. See you.
Thanks.